Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and today the word on the street is that this hurricane that's down in the Gulf in the United States, I'm going to start to get some of that wind and rain up here in Georgia. And so I think it's today. So anyway, the wind is not blowing at all right now. And so I was going to go ahead and get my video out of the way because I don't know if we'll lose power, how bad the wind will get, or if it'll do anything at all. It may just be a bunch of rain. But anyway, I've got some interesting stuff for you today. At the end of this video, yesterday I showed you the clip where I asked Tim Draper whether he owned XRP. If you didn't get the answer to that, go watch the video from yesterday. Well, I have more video. It wasn't just Tim Draper, but Greg Kidd was also in the Link to conference. And if you haven't visited their website, it's linqto.com. And they sell private equity, and they have private equity right now. You can get private equity in Ripple, Link to, Uphold. Am I forgetting anything? I think right now you can get those, but they're going to be adding others shortly, is what I think. So, I want to start. That's at the end. At the end of the video, I'm going to play you clips from Tim Draper and Greg Kidd that I know you will find interesting. But first, I want to start with it. But in this video, by the way, I also have some clips from Jim Rickards, and I think those might blow your mind because someone made me aware of a clip where I know he knows about Ripple and XRP, but today I'm going to show you a clip where he knows about another digital asset that we've talked about on this channel as well. Okay, first I want to show you this. This is from XRP Yo-Yo. A modern instant secure payment system, all connected. And I'm just going to show you this one part until we get to the little slide that I wanted to show you. This is Steve Kirsch, CEO of, I guess, a company called Token.
Kirsch, the CEO of Token. I'm delighted to share a story with you today. First, a little bit of background. I'm a high-tech serial entrepreneur who has pioneered many key computer technologies, including the optical mouse, desktop publishing, and internet search. My co-founder, Yobi Benjamin, was the global CTO for Citigroup. Our company is funded by former and current executives at Google, Facebook, and Xiaomi. Just over a year ago, we assembled a small army of very talented engineers from banks in places like Google, Amazon, Facebook, Stanford, and MIT, and gave them a very ambitious assignment: redesign the payment infrastructure for the world.
Right there. I just wanted to show you this right here. The Ripple, they've got Bitcoin and Ripple right here. Distributed ledger, crypto. All right. I'm not going to go any further into that. I just wanted you to see that. All right. William Goodson. Blackstone warns of a lost decade where stock market returns are anemic. I believe that unless they put the stocks on the blockchain, and even if they do, it's probably that's going to be the case. Digital assets, I'm telling you, digital assets, precious metals, don't forget it. Backed, BondCrypt announced that more than $200 million worth of Bitcoin contracts have been traded over a single day, breaking its previous record by 36%. The steady increase in volume suggests that institutions are now warming to it. So Backed, remember, Backed is supposed to be announcing an app this year, by the way. They've been about as quiet as PolySign. Just as quiet. Now, this was from XRP Crypto Wolf. Ripple's Swell Conference will go live on October 14th and 15th. Sheila Warren will bring her expertise alongside a bold roster of soon-to-be-announced payments experts and industry luminaries to discuss trends and successful blockchain implementations. Sheila Warren, head of the blockchain and digital assets team at the World Economic Forum. I decided I would go look up Sheila Warren's LinkedIn. World Economic Forum, head of blockchain for 3 years. Where was she before? Or where is she a member? Look down here. She's a member of the Bretton Woods Committee. There's Bretton Woods again. How come that keeps popping up? So I thought it'd be worth, that organization that she's a member of is BrettonWoods.org. Let's go back and look at it. See if you recognize anybody in these photos. There's the lady that runs the IMF. I can't remember who that is. There's Christine Lagarde that runs the ECB. There she is again. I can't remember these two guys. That might be the guy that started the World Economic Forum. I can't remember. Is it Klaus Schwab or something? I don't know if that's him or not. Looks kind of like him. Not sure who these people are, but then there's Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary of the United States. There's Nancy Pelosi. In fact, I saw a very uncomfortable clip with Jim Cramer yesterday where he calls her crazy Nancy. It was pretty cringeworthy. All right. I just wanted to show you Bretton Woods there. Brad Garlinghouse tweeted this out yesterday. Disappointing to see India flip-flop on crypto, hamstringing a nation industry which could serve one of the biggest populations of unbanked, underbanked citizens. And this is a Bloomberg article. India plans to introduce a new law banning trade in cryptocurrencies, unlike Asian peers that have chosen to regulate the fledgling market. Big, huge whammo mistake by India. I don't believe for a second that this is going to be followed through with. I believe all the world is a stage, folks. And I believe we've been on a stage watching, or not on a stage, but we've been watching a stage in many different aspects for the last 3 years. And I told you yesterday, I don't believe, and I'll say it again, two things. I don't believe for a minute that Anthony Pompliano came out of nowhere as this young guy who represents this Bitcoin thing, the Bitcoin maxi thing. And he just some young guy that just happened to pop up, happens to have an entree into every billionaire or interview that you could possibly want in the space. Don't believe it. He's affiliated with Morgan Creek. He's affiliated with all these guys. Anytime he wants to get them on, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, he gets Jim Cramer on. I will never forget what I saw yesterday, and I showed it to you on this channel. Jim Cramer for years has poo-pooed Bitcoin and all that. This guy, are you telling me, and we know, we can document that he knew about it as early as 2014. I showed you a video from yesterday. I will never forget when I was watching that Anthony Pompliano video with Jim Cramer. And Jim Cramer, who runs the most important show on CNBC and has the following of many, 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 many millionaires that are of a generation who need to now be sold on digital assets and Bitcoin. Jim Cramer was literally taking notes for his own investment, like literally had a pen out and he's taking notes. It was, to me, I was watching it and I was sitting there going, he should have come on my show because we could have staged this a little better. because I was watching him taking notes and I'm sitting there going, man, you're not a very good actor. You know, I mean, I was literally watching it saying, you are not a very good actor, because he was sitting there taking notes as Anthony Pompliano tells him about Bitcoin. Are you kidding? After you've known about it for 6 years. And now all of a sudden you're taking notes from a guy that's half your age. No freaking way. All the world's a stage, folks. All the world's a stage. Don't forget that, because we've seen a lot of stage antics. In fact, yesterday when I asked, and I'm not going to give you his answer, but when I asked Tim Draper if he owned XRP, I have been in this space. I've been following this. I've had this YouTube channel for over 2 years, and I have screamed at my screen a million times and said, why? Tim Draper's been interviewed by more people than I can count. Why has no one ever that I've ever seen asked him point blank, do you hold XRP? You wear a Bitcoin tie every time anybody sees you. Nobody. I've never seen anybody just point blank, do you own XRP? Because he doesn't talk about it. For 2 years, we have shown person after person who are billionaires and people that are way high up and know, they have to know, that act like they can't say the word Ripple, they can't say the word XRP. And I watched Tim Draper for over 2 years, and nobody ever just came out and asked him the question. And so I did. And we got the answer yesterday. But the why, the why has that not been asked, and why have they not offered it up without being asked in as many interviews as a lot of these people have done? I think the answer to that question tells you everything you need to know. The world is a stage. Okay. Or all the world is a stage is like a Shakespeare quote. All right. Ray Dalio, this was uploaded yesterday. Listen up.
Real threat right now to the U.S. dollar's status as the world's reserve currency?
Yes, there is a threat. It's an evolutionary type of process. There's not yet a good alternative in the form of a currency per se, but people are not investors, big, large institutional investors, don't run out necessarily to alternative currency because the three major reserve currencies all have the same basic problem. That's why they move into a new storehold of wealth. And you see that the storehold of wealth, like in 1933 reaction, is equities, is gold, is other asset classes that go up. So
which other asset classes
when you buy
would that
a company and you have low returns on your bonds and so on, that is that kind of movement, but the same is true for gold and other asset classes. If that gets too far, and it's standing the risk of, it's very dangerous. It looks like a currency defense. In other words, if those who are holding bonds, which are a lot, choose to sell the bonds because they're not providing a good return, and they're not, and because there's so much debt production and debt monetization, that puts the Federal Reserve or other central banks in the very difficult position of operating like a currency defense. Mechanistically, as money leaves that debt, that means either interest rates would rise, which would be terrible for the economy and markets, or they're forced to buy more and more. And that is how a spiral could occur.
All right. So Ray Dalio sees what's happening. Now look at this. CoinDesk, the Bahamas sand dollar will likely be the world's first live central bank digital currency when it launches. Now, look at this. CS May sent me this from Giant Gox. SBI President Capital has been named as the new Prime Minister's economic advisor. This is the same SBI President Capital. Remember, folks, for those of you that don't know or don't remember, SBI Holdings invested they bought 10.5% of Ripple in 2016. Later, the SBI CEO, Yoshitaka Capital, they call him Capital's son, like the Karate Kid. What do they call it? Mr. Miyagi? What do they call it? Daniel's son. They call him Capital's son. Well, Yoshitaka Capital has been all in on XRP ever since. Now, my reaction to this, do you remember when out of nowhere, all of a sudden this guy that was working for Steve Mnuchin at One West Bank, Brian Brooks, he goes to Coinbase and then all of a sudden he pops up the OCC. That was the kind of thought I had here. SBI President Capital has been named as the new Prime Minister's economic advisor. Now remember, when I saw this, I had the same reaction as Anders L. My mind was just blown. Okay, you remember this about SBI, the SBI CEO? SBI Group CEO bags key position at China Investment Association's Committee on Blockchain and Big Data. It says it will be the first time for a private company manager to become a strategic investment advisor at the 17 committees that make up the China Investment Association. Recognizing the recent appointment as a strategic investment senior advisor as an opportunity, we will further promote blockchain and digital asset utilization at financial institutions in Japan and Asia and strive to develop financial services with high customer benefit. Now, do you remember this? This is when Thinking Crypto interviewed Adam Trademan, CEO of SBI Ripple Asia. Listen to what Adam Trademan had to say about the CEO of SBI. Listen to this.
Guy is literally Ripple's biggest fan. Like, Kitao-san is trying to make XRP and Ripple successful everywhere. Let me give you an example that'll seem crazy to you, but it's actually true. So there's going to be the next World's Fair Can you imagine they still have these things? World's Fair is going to be in Osaka in like 2025, something like that. I don't remember.
Wow, they still have those? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know, right? That's what I said, right? It's going, if he gets his way, the CEO of SBI, it's going to be, if you go there and you want to buy anything from a Coca-Cola to a hamburger, it's going to take XRP. You can only pay an XRP. That's what we're working towards. Okay? Wow. That's just one little example, right? Sure. But more important to that is replacement for international wire transfers in SWIFT, right? So I'm meeting all the time with these like bankers, central bankers. I met with the head of the central bank from Cambodia last year in December. And they're looking for alternatives to technologies like SWIFT because they want to get out from under the thumb of the U.S. Department of Treasury, which sort of runs the global banking network, right? I mean, SWIFT is a Belgian company by definition, but it's there's a lot of U.S. influence in a lot of things in banking, right? Yeah. And so technologies like that are legal, like Ripple's tech, are really attractive to a multitude of parties. It's not just about things like that. It's mainly about lower cost, better customer experience, lower risk, and just faster, right? The kind of things that people like you and I care about, right? That's what ultimately we're doing with SBI Ripple Asia, is we're enabling like remittance companies and PSPs to send money, or individuals to send money back to their families and stuff like that, and just have it go faster and cheaper. Right. And the fact that you use Ripple under the hood, they don't need to necessarily know that. Just like you don't know what happens when you swipe a credit card, in France, right? And it charges your bank in America. Who the hell cares what happens under the hood? Yeah. It better just work. It does. Same thing here with this kind of thing, right? And so Ripple Asia's business has been growing because Asia happens to be just a lot more progressive when it comes to, all sorts of payment rails and things of that sort. So the use cases that make the most sense right now are remittances. So, like I said, folks sending money.
All right, so there you go. Now, Stuart XRP at Stuart680-777-97 sent me this. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, folks. You're going to want to strap in here. Esoteric XRP. XRP, gold, XLM, silver. In case you missed it, Jim Rickards talking about stellar lumens. He gives an example of DLT using XLM. I missed this clip. I never have seen this clip. But what I did is I'm going to show you this clip, and then I'm going to show you my other three favorite clips from Jim Rickards, where it lets you know Jim Rickards knows. Jim Rickards has always known. This guy's connected all the way to the heights of government. Listen up. Here we go. This is good.
The Betamax machine today is in the Smithsonian. So this is why I make the point, distributed ledger technology is here to stay. Some cryptocurrencies or tokens have a bright future. I'm not a technophobe. I read the technical papers. I get it. I have a cryptocurrency newsletter. If anybody wants to subscribe, I have some recommendations for my readers. But I just look at Bitcoin and it doesn't pass the test.
So you actually like some of the ICOs. It sounds like you would not hesitate to invest in an ICO, but you're anti-Bitcoin.
I am definitely anti-Bitcoin. I'm also, let's qualify ICOs. There are, I'll say, very few. Look, 90% of the ICOs are frauds. Just state that as simple declaratory as we can.
99%.
Okay, 99% of them are frauds. So I don't want to go sign up or encourage any listeners to sign up for any ICOs, and I certainly don't. But there are some cryptocurrencies that have sponsorship. They've been put together by development teams. They have serious partners, meaning major banks, or there's Sawtooth from Intel. There's the Hyperledger Fabric. There's the Linux Foundation. There's now a repository for developments in distributed ledger technology where they have a developer community who it's all open source. They're contributing all the software for free. There's a cryptocurrency called Stellar. Lumen is the name of the coin. Stellar is the sponsoring organization. Ticker is XLM. This is actually being used in a pilot project with IBM to create a payment system in the Southwestern Pacific and all those little tiny island nations, Micronesia and Samoa and the Marianas. Well, think about what they have to do. So you go to a Starbucks in, New Caledonia or someplace, and that poor bank is, you got a merchant acquirer who accepts your MasterCard, then they got to hand it over to the local bank. That bank has to send it to a correspondent bank in Sydney, Australia. The bank in Sydney, Australia has got to run it through the Visa network. Then they got to get paid. Then they got to send it back to this little bank. So think of all the steps, all the costs. etc. What if you could replace that with a blockchain? They are doing this, by the way. This is a real pilot using the Lumen token. Well, IBM has built this. Lumen is the token of choice. It's working extremely well. And those value is moving around without going through this clunky central bank network and correspondent bank network that I just described. It's cheaper. That means, people can either lower prices or offer more services. And it's also big on remittances. A lot of countries around the world, the job opportunities are limited. So the population, they migrate, they go to Europe or the United States or elsewhere to get jobs. But the mom and dad and the little sister are still home. And so they send money back home. Remittances are very clunky. A lot of the people have been using Western Union or other payment systems. So there are real applications for real cryptocurrencies out there, and they are being used. And those are the ones I would look for. But, unless you can compete with Visa and MasterCard, see, the pilot I just described with Lumen is cheaper than Visa and MasterCard, but Bitcoin isn't even close. So to me, it's not a bias. I'm not a technophobe. I'm just trying to apply real analytic metrics.
Let's just say for a moment that the scaling issue is solved and that the energy issue is solved. And let's say we have a decentralized crypto coin. We could come up with whatever name we want. Do you see central banks and governments, the IMF, you name it, government entity, allowing that to become a global dominant force?
No, but what they will do is have their own. This is happening by central banks and governments. They're not allowing independent teams to preempt their national currencies at all. In fact, you're seeing clampdowns all over the world every day. Another country or another regulator, yesterday it was Eric Schneiderman, the Attorney General of New York. The day before that, it was, I think, one of the Latin American countries. So they're clamping down all over the world. But what they are going to do is hijack the technology and create what they call permissioned systems. China and Russia are already working on this, and they'll have, call it a Putin coin or a Xi coin or whatever you want to call it. But they will have Russia and China and their allies in Central Asia and elsewhere will have an encrypted distributed ledger using their own token so they can settle balance of payments between themselves and completely bypass SWIFT and the dollar payment system. So you won't be able to impose sanctions. You won't be able to freeze accounts. Iran will be able to pay North Korea for weapons technology without fear that the U.S. Treasury is going to get Deutsche Bank to intercept the payment, which is exactly what happens today. Now, they're also using gold. It's kind of interesting. They're using the oldest form of money, which is gold, and the newest form of money, which is cryptocurrencies, but they're using both. And it's all with a view. And by the way, the IMF is not far behind. They're working on a crypto SDR. So, you know what the SDR is, the special drawing right. That's world money. So the Fed can print dollars, the ECB can print euros, and the IMF can print SDRs, and they have, and they will, particularly in the next global financial crisis. But between now and then, they'll build, there's this distinction between the permissionless system and the permissioned system in terms of DLT. And the permissioned system is one of the solutions to the scalability, sustainability problems that you were talking about, Steve, because what it says is that only certain people can join. In the case of the IMF, it would be the 189 member countries. You and I would not be able to have an SDR account down at the good old IMF, but, Russia and Brazil and India and the BRICS and the US would have these accounts. So it's like a club. If you know who the members are, you don't have to worry about people showing up in jeans and flip-flops. Everyone's got to wear a suit. Same thing. If you have a permission system and you can trust the people in it, you don't need the proof of work. You don't need the proof of stake. You don't need all the clunky governance models to validate the blockchain because you have relatively few people and you know who they are, so they're not going to cheat on that system. But you have the benefits of distributed ledger technology, bypassing the dollar system, and very fast and inexpensive payments. So that's where they're heading. And the next time they issue SDRs, it'll be on this blockchain technology, but all with a view to making SWIFT and Fedwire obsolete.
All right, so that's...
How about them apples, folks? Now, listen, I wanted to show you a few more clips. For those of you that haven't seen them, this is also Jim Rickards.
I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow. I'm saying that in a financial panic, in a liquidity crisis, in a monetary panic, worse than 2008, which I do expect, if international elites, the IMF, finance ministers of the G20 countries have to restore confidence and they turn to gold, which they might, you have to have $10,000 gold. Any lower price is deflationary. It would completely defeat the purpose. It would repeat the blunders of 1925. And so basically there's nothing standing in the way of a gold standard tomorrow.
All right, so then you had that. Now, let's go back to a couple more clips that you got to see. While this guy's talking here, I want you to look at Jim Rickards' body language. Listen to this.
Exactly. Right. There are some cryptos that are working with regulators and are working with banks.
I agree.
Ripple would be an example.
Ripple would
XRP.
be an example, right.
Now, this is and I can imagine in the next 5 years, instead of us doing sterling against the dollar or sterling against yen and doing these kinds of transactions, we'll do sterling versus Ripple. And the reason being, dollar right now is a 2-day settlement. With something like Ripple, you could do settlement in seconds. And I think that there's a future there where the guy that's trading spot FX today will be trading spot FX against Ripple in the future, in the next 2 or 3 years. So I think that Ripple has a great future because it's right now supported by all the banks and by all the regulators.
And it has an elastic monetary base, right?
So well, if we take that and you go to.
So they all know. They're all not anybody was disagreeing with that at all. And Jim Rickards' body language told me he knew too. Then there was this from Jim Rickards when he was talking at a conference, this Cambridge House International. I've shown this before, but some of you haven't seen it. I wanted you to see it.
And yet North Korea is going for these weapons, so therefore we're heading for a war. I think you all know what that'll do to the price of gold. Look for the IMF to maybe have a crypto SDR on a permissioned hyperledger. And again, the BRICS are...
All right, that's the same thing he said in that clip that I played for you earlier. But if you look, you'll see some names you recognize. U.S. power, Russia and China building alternative payment systems, including crypto blockchains. IMF promoting a new world money called the special drawing right, permissioned hyperledger fabric. Now, who knows what exactly they're going to do? The important thing is that I believe XRP and probably XLM are going to be the two things that bridge a lot of what they do. And that
about
is a big deal.
On the brink of getting veto power in the IMF, so the IMF will not be able to bail out the world unless they say so, and their price might be the end of the dollar as the global reserve currency.
All right. I wanted to show you this before. Remember, after I show you this global investor conference agenda, after this, I'm going to play you the clips from Tim Draper and Greg Kidd from yesterday. I think you'll find these pretty darn interesting. But this is the global conference. This was day one that happened yesterday. Day two is today. This is the last day of their conference. This is on Pacific time. So these are like tonight. So this is like at 9:20 Eastern time tonight. These people, I'm going to try to go into this one right here. And because I want to ask these guys one simple question. These are all venture capital firms. And I want to ask these venture capital firms, I want them to all go around and I want to ask them one question. And that is, what is your firm's top 3 digital asset holdings or top 5, whatever? And I want to hear all of the different answers to that question. So hopefully they'll let me ask a question in this conference. If they do, that's the question I want answered. Now, let me tell you this. I'm the digital asset investor. And by the way, the video is coming after I say this. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends and family that Tim Draper and Greg Kidd are at the end of my video today. Thank you for listening.
And so when you see that, you start realizing that, no, we don't actually have to have these borders. We can actually operate without them. Well, that's a huge threat to these people who are in power and want to hold on to it at the expense of their people. And so you're seeing this backlash, but I think that backlash is the rise or the roar of the dying lion. It's like the lion roars and then dies. And then all of a sudden we're global. And I think that's going to happen. I think these countries who are trying to control their borders and control their people and tell everybody, no Bitcoin here or whatever, you can only operate here in this country, whatever. I think they're going to die off, and the new world, and I think that new world is 5, 6 years away, something like that. All of a sudden, we are going to be global. So I think this is the most exciting time in the history of the world. We are actually taking an anthropological step forward. We're going from being a tribal society to a global society. And it all happened because we created these amazing currencies, Bitcoin and all the other currencies, that are open and global and aren't tied to some political force. And so I'm very excited about what could happen in the future. We have a company called Unstoppable Domains that is decentralized free speech. So in effect, you can put anything you want. You can get, Rumi.crypto, and you can write anything you want on that, and no one can take it down. And that's the beginning of free speech around the world. And that freedom will spread free markets, free assembly, free whatever. And our world is going to be much, much better off. I mean, think about losing all the freedoms. If I talked to all these guys in South Korea and I said, when you guys start thinking about, maybe we should think about socialism or whatever, I think just look north. That you got a socialist dictatorship there, and that's what you get. Do you really want that? And it's like in Hong Kong, when there was a Chinese Communist Party, the average Hong Kong person made about $36,000 a year, and the average Chinese made about $100 a year. And then the markets opened up, and the Chinese got rich. You need freedom, you need free markets, and you need globalization. And we will all be better off by being globalized. So anyway, it's more than just like, hey, are we into DeFi or what's the next big thing? It is, we are transforming humanity, and this is the greatest time in the history of the world. So any of you guys who are investing, buying tokens, whatever you're doing, keep it up, because this is really an important time.
Yeah, I think most everyone on this conference would totally agree with you, Tim. And I saw Greg smiling earlier. I know you have some Federal Reserve experience, so you may want to have, you have some opinions here too. But Greg, and I should say, Tim, I liked your phrasing up front of kind of the step fashion of first we have just the asset, and then what do you do with the asset? Then how do you spend the asset? And we love the big picture as well. But I also feel, maybe this is just me talking, but just that step from the asset to what do you do with the asset, it's getting a little bit complicated. There are people that are looking at DeFi, certainly on the institutional side, it's like, what is this about? Are we losing the bigger vision? Are we losing the plot as we think about what's happening in the crypto landscape today? Greg, I didn't know if you have any views of, as you look at crypto at this moment, how you feel about it, if you have any particular dogs in the battle right now that you think are going to win out.
I first want to say I want a ticket on Tim's rocket ship, because I think he's going to get us to the Star Trek future I've always wanted to live in, where there's Cleons and Romulans and everybody can buy dilithium crystals, right? Like they just left out those intermediate scenes where they must have figured out how we got between like the Federal Reserve view and DeFi and Star Trek, and those missing episodes, they must be found or they must be written. And I think Tim is working on those.
It's either going to be Star Trek or Mad Max.
It's going to be Star Trek or Mad Max or George Orwell. But I'm hoping it's the Star Trek rendition. And I don't think we're going to get there through socialism or GDPR or whatnot. But look, we live in a time. There was an economist, Hayek, who wrote in 1975 about the denationalization of currencies. And his argument was basically, look, if there's a better form of money out there, just like any better product or service, why shouldn't it win out? Why should like national governments have a monopoly on money? And if you're a historian, and you look back in history, that hasn't gone so well. And I'm like from the Federal Reserve, and we're supposed to be like everybody's seen Hamilton and like a concept of a central bank having like strong discipline on money. And, at some point the Fed has printed, trillions of dollars of new money. At some point, there's got to be some number of zeros in terms of how many dollars you print where people begin to lose confidence. And at least with Bitcoin or Ethereum or XRP, there's like a known number. And at some point, debasement of the currency will lead to people, including those housewives or anybody who has like a view about risk, that, I better hold some of those things where they can't just add zeros on to the back end. And it would be imprudent to not have those. And, to the view of the global vision, in a period when there's all that uncertainty, the thing that these new solutions bring is something that does work across borders. It is, more permissionless. And I don't know how you wouldn't consider that to be part of the mix. And all I can say is, sometimes things have to get bad enough to get better. And so some combination of when you see the inability of our current social political system to deal with things like COVID, or like the move toward like populism and authoritarianism, when you see the problem of climate change, and then you look to new currencies, whether it's, Ripple or Ether or Bitcoin, or even just like the tokenization of something like carbon credits. That's one of the ones I've been looking at lately, is like carbon's a problem all over the world. Instead of having all these little local siloed carbon solutions, why wouldn't you have like a token that looks at carbon and have a global market? And so if you really are concerned that global warming is going to happen and people are going to pay more for carbon offsets, heck, I'd like to hold not gold. I'd like to not just hold Bitcoin, but I'd like to hold some carbon credits as well. And so these new capabilities that really let anybody have a wallet to hold whatever they want, it puts pressure on central governments to like do a better job or move over, because something else is coming. And, we don't have to look up at Mr. Chairman of the Federal Reserve or some other currency and say, oh, please, like, do the responsible thing, because, that has not worked so well in the last couple of years, the last couple of decades, or the last couple of centuries. And so it's hard to imagine why people wouldn't want to have tucked away in their wallet, just like you used to have like an old little paper traveler's check just packed away for a rainy day. But we're not talking about a rainy day. When you see the vision of things like Libra or Gram, both of which have had like misfires because they've been in the regulatory crosshairs, but people weren't like afraid of Gram and Libra because they weren't going to work. They were afraid of them because they are going to work. And same thing like with digital currency from the Chinese central government, although I'm yet to figure out how are they going to handle that with tourists, with remittances, and with trade, right? So if it's a central bank currency and you don't have like some form of identity, I don't know how it's going to work. So the DeFi people are the ones that are innovating, and they aren't necessarily waiting for permission to innovate. And you get a different kind of innovation when it's permissionless. Now, that doesn't mean I'm promoting not like being compliant with the law, but this is a situation where technology can get ahead of the politicians. And, I'm not saying we're not going to have problems, but sitting here and just doing the same old thing and thinking that we're going to come out with a different outcome, COVID, fires, the problems with the breakdown of our political system suggests that Hayek might be right. There might be a currency that reflects somebody else being in charge besides a single company or a single government.
Right. Those are fantastic points. And I'm curious then, Tim, your earlier comments about this being global, and yet we do see some forays by some central banks. China, you mentioned, Greg, with their central bank digital currency. Is this going to be operating? Are we going to be operating together with institutions and the new innovators in the DeFi space? Will the institutions need to go away? Are central banks, once they come out with central bank digital currencies, able to regain leadership in the development of our financial systems and control of that? I was just curious what your view is, if governments are necessary, if they're going to be leading, if we're going to be side by side, or if they're going to become obsolete.
I'm creating a new category, the DGov. We call it DGov. No, look, Aurora coin was created in Iceland. Iceland saw that these coins were happening, and they said, hey, okay, we're going to have our own cryptocurrency. It's called Aurora coin. The reason you haven't heard of Aurora coin it was a huge failure because it's not accepted outside their borders.
Right.
All this, and their Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, all these things are accepted everywhere. So if I'll give you two interesting examples. If you're in Argentina or Nigeria, you know this. Your currency drops 30, 40% every single year like clockwork. And when you hold Argentinian pesos or Nigerian naira or Venezuelan bolivar, they're like hot potatoes. You're trying to quickly move them out and get rid of them because you really want to hold on to the Bitcoin and the dollars. Well, now we're printing so many dollars that you're not going to want to hold on to the dollars either. I mean, the dollar can't hold its value if we've just printed 20% more of them. It's got to be dropping. But what if you're in Syria or Sudan and you've got a bunch of Sudanese money and they push you out of Sudan and now you're a refugee in Greece and you're sitting there and you're going, well, you don't take my Sudanese money. Well, what do? I live in a tent and that's the way it goes. Well, what if you had Bitcoin? You'd go and you just go, I got Bitcoin. I'll pull it down. I'll buy a house in Greece. I'm off to the races. And my life starts again. And that political force that was so nasty to me didn't have the devastating effect on me that it would have if I didn't have a global currency. So I think that it's also, think about that. That's going to do two things. One is it's going to make people freer and more open to the world and travel and decide that they want to go to one place or another and make the governments compete for them. But it's also going to be it makes a government become accountable because, sure, you could be a dictator of an area and maybe you've even got a military force. But if everybody leaves, then who's going to feed you? And you're stuck. You got a bunch of military guys you got to keep fed, and you're stuck. They've all left. They've gone somewhere else, and then that economy is thriving because they had a better government. So I think this is great because it forces governments to be like businesses. They have to compete for their customers. They have to be accountable to their customers, and their customers are their constituents. And so, just as everybody's leaving California to go to Texas, you're going to see similar movement in all these different places where if you have good government in one place and bad government in another, the people will leave the bad government and move to the good government. And I think that COVID has put a little bit of a damper on this thing, but it's also accelerated it. It's accelerated people's knowledge of Bitcoin wallets are going through the roof because people are kind of stuck in their house and going, well, what am I going to do? Put on the VR goggles and then try some Bitcoin and, try a few of these things that they've been thinking of trying for a long time. But it's also making us realize how valuable it is to be able to travel, to be able to be open and have an open and free world. That freedom, we're realizing how incredibly valuable that freedom is. Absolutely. And I think that that's going to be so in some ways this COVID is a catalyst to this new world. And so it's incredibly exciting.
That are existing because they centralize data, and in a decentralized world, what do you envision their role will be, if any? Will they be getting into more of the decentralized technologies and distributing and sharing their own infrastructure and assets, or are they also going to become obsolete the way that central banks may?
Well, and again, if you've read the Libra white paper, all 8 pages of it, you can do a lot of things with decentralized or with blockchain technology. But if your governance is such that like the on ramps and off ramps are still controlled by centralized organizations. I mean, it's going to have a somewhat muted effect. I don't think you can ignore Facebook. I don't think you can ignore WeChat. I don't think you can ignore Telegram. Just like in 1995, you couldn't ignore AOL, CompuServe, and Prodigy. Oh man, they were the kick-ass electronic networks. And this thing called the World Wide Web, well, it was pretty wimpy and geeky, and but it was a global protocol. And even though it didn't have as good of a chatbot as the AOL chatbot, the concept of interoperability, that's the killer app. And the fact that it was, it wasn't a Brazilian internet and a Chinese internet, that interoperability is very, very compelling to a developer community, to end users. And the approach of Facebook and WeChat, it's a little like if you ever saw the movie Demolition Man. There's like the fast food wars in the future, and Taco Bell wins. So all restaurants are Taco Bell. So that Highlander approach where one sword to rule them all, that like Facebook is going to win and everybody else is going to lose and Libra's going to be it. I mean, you can imagine that that's not that exciting for other folks to integrate into. Just like when Facebook went to India and said, hey, we'll bring you, free internet. It'll be Facebook free internet. And, India said, well, gee, guys, thanks, but no thanks. So solutions that are inherently brought to us by one industry, one company, one country, and yet they still say coalition of the willing, jump on it. It's really, really hard that any single company, any single country, any single industry is going to figure this out. It's going to have to be a more protocol neutral based solution. And again, that was the key innovation of Bitcoin. It wasn't for any particular industry, any particular company, any particular country. I mean, part of the reason I joined Ripple was when I went to sign up for the blockchain battle, there wasn't a Bitcoin company to join. I mean, I could invest and put first money into Coinbase, but Ripple there was an address and I could go and get a job there. I didn't really care what I did. I just said, I want to learn about this. I hear there's this ledger that you can do not just the native currency, but it has other currencies issued by other backers. I don't know if that's going to work, but I can't join the Bitcoin company. I can buy Bitcoin. So anyway, you can get involved. And similarly, anyway, it doesn't matter if you're a technologist or whatnot, you should have some of this in your portfolio because, in the Mad Max world, maybe it's bullets that's the currency of the future, but, I think it might be Bitcoin, maybe a little bit of gold, a little bit of carbon credits, but why wouldn't you have some of digital gold in your wallet?
Ruby, can I interject a little?
Every day, billions of people around the world are mocked, ridiculed, laughed at, and embarrassed by their friends, family, and even strangers. These people go through their days knowing there are secrets being kept from them. They hear the faint whispers behind closed doors. The information and knowledge is held very close and only shared with others who were fortunate enough to find out. Feeling lost, rejected, and ostracized, these people give up, never finding out what digital assets the digital asset investor holds. But there is hope. Join the free Digital Asset Investor email newsletter and find out what digital assets he owns each month, including investments he's considering. Click the link in the description of this video or go to digitalassetinvestornewsletter.com. Put an end to your days of gloom and depression. Join the greatest free digital asset email newsletter ever created.